Welcome on the stage, ma'am. She is also the member of WOW family. Uh, Next in the panelist, we have the lead discussant for this session, Dipanjali Singh, an author, poet, painter, and educationist who loves working with children. She is a director at Learntastic. Welcome, ma'am, and kindly take this session forward. Stage is all yours.
Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to you all. It's such a pleasure to be here in the company of fellow book lovers, readers, and writers. A big thank you to Sanjeev Chopra ji and the entire Value of Words team for hosting this incredible gathering today. We are here to celebrate creativity and the written word. And it is my absolute honor to be a part of the launch of Bijoya's latest offering of short stories, Hill Songs of Love and Longing. So without further ado, let's get on with the book launch. And I would also like to invite you all to purchase a copy of the book and get it signed by Bijoya after our session. Mona, on Bijoya's demand, we would like you to come and launch the book. Please come up on stage, Mona Verma.
I'm not even a patch on your equipment.
No, I'll be delighted.
How lovely. I think it's a bigger moment for me than launching my own book to be conferred this honor and privilege to launch the book of such a celebrated writer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mona.
Thank you. So kind. So. Oh, I buy. I buy.
So, as the chair of this event, we kickstart the session with my 2 cents on this absolutely fantastic book, which Bijoya has written. Bijoya weaves a very rich tapestry of longing, beauty, and emotional depth in this book, set against the breathtaking backdrop of Meghalaya, where there are these vast and serene landscapes of nature. She very seamlessly manages to merge the landscape of nature with the intimate complexities of human relationships. The result is a collection of stories that have a way of speaking to the universal sense of longing, wanting a connection, and even alienation for that matter. So each story in the book pulled at my heartstrings. Like I said to you, Bijoya, I had tears many a times as I was reading, because each story brings forth an aspect, a very poignant aspect of love and human experience. What I would also absolutely want to add is there is exquisite melody in Bijoya's writing. It flows rhythmically, there are emotional peaks, there are gentle troughs, and then there are naughty turns. It's almost like writing a song. It was true joy going through Bijoya's book, and I must say that you all have to get your copy to experience what I'm talking about. There's way more I'd love to say, and I could keep going on, but I know Dipanjali has many questions which will throw light further on the book. So to take our conversation forward, I'll request Dipanjali to take over. Rajat Shakti was to launch the book. A very warm welcome to you. Why don't you come up on stage? Rajat Shakti of Red FM.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you. I'm honored and humbled and a little late. But yes, and as, yes.
thank you. I know that you're always busy. She's the radio head of.
So
Red
yes,
FM.
the introduction was asked by Bijoya, but I think I can speak without the mic. Am I audible?
Yeah, just.
All right. So, all right. Thank you so much. So, as no, no, please be seated. I'll just take 2 minutes. I will not be much. Few words may turn into sentences, but bear with me because I had the privilege of going through a few chapters. I take my time to read a book, and I have known Bijoya for past couple of years, and whosoever has known Bijoya know her for her immaculate taste in dressing, apart from her grace and the personality that she has. And another thing, sorry about that. May I hand it over to you, please? Thank you so much, so that it doesn't disturb anybody else. So coming back to Bijoya, so when I was going through few chapters, I already know that she has an immaculate taste in all the things that she does. But when I was going through the chapters, I actually what we believe in art and any literature, any part of literature, what we remember are the characters. So nobody remembers how the book was written except for the character. So you have done such a justice to the characters. So Linnesora that I'm reading, if I'm pronouncing it right. So when we talk about Bijoya, you would never think of a character being seen through her eyes because there Bijoya is not the person who's the narrator. It's the lady through whom she speaks of the mountains. And she takes you there to all those distant places. And that, I think, is a beauty of how a writer should interact with the audience. So thank you for introducing me to your book. And when we say that we are here for our friend, Bijoya, I'm also here when I know her as her work as a translator to many other literary work, but as an author to her own book, she has done, I think, a great job with the characters that you have portrayed here. So thank you for that, and thank you for the very beautiful note that you left for me. And I'm really humbled and honored to be launching your second launching of your book, and I wish to hear more from your speakers today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I'd like to begin by first wishing a very good afternoon to you, Ira, and to you, ma'am, and also to our audience present here. Um, I would just want to say that, congratulations on your book launch.
Thank you.
And I totally enjoyed reading the book. The stories are very unique, and each one is quite mysterious. So my first question to you is, when we hear about, love and longing, we only, it's a very casual approach. We only think about romantic love. But your book actually covers love in all different forms that it is present on earth. So my question to you is, how did you come about with the collection of stories? How did you decide which one should be a part of it? And what inspired the title, The Hill Songs of Love and Longing?
Thank you all for being here. The title first. Hill songs because it's about the hill folk of Meghalaya. And it's about love, different kinds of love, not only for human beings, but for nature and any moment you encounter or a place you've been to. And longing is a very integral part of love. I think it's a very beautiful part of love.
Yes.
I mean, that's how I chose the title.
Okay. And how did you come about choosing your stories that I want this one or, these ones? Because I know you have a lot of stories.
I didn't find the stories. I think the stories found me.
Okay.
It would be like an incident or, an incident or a person I meet or just a moment, in a flash. And it's suddenly a story spinning in my head and it won't leave me till I write it down.
Oh.
It's like Rumi says, they came spinning out of nothingness, like stars.
Wonderful.
So they found me and they wouldn't let me go.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, so while I was reading your book, I realized that each story in its own way is not just telling a story of love, but it's also telling a story about the people of Meghalaya, their lifestyle, and about the Khasis. For example, in the story of Betty Mai, we learn about the various traditions that take place in the Khasi community when somebody passes away. On the other hand, in the story of Risalin, we learn about the courting traditions before you decide to get married to someone. So there is a special courting tradition that takes place, and you meet different people. So I want to know what is the importance, how important is family and traditional values in today's time?
Now, first, I'll tell you why I wrote the stories, and each story has something significant about the Khasi way of life. Because when I joined college over a half a century ago in Delhi, I found that nobody knew anything about the Northeast.
Yes.
And it's fair enough because we knew so little about the South or the West or the North of this country. It's a country with immense diversity. And I was asked very funny questions, and I thought I must somehow project my part of the world to the rest of India to begin with, and to the rest of the world, especially in our own country, because nobody knew that. Say you are from Ceylon, that means Sri Lanka was Ceylon
Yes.
those days.
Yes.
And they didn't know Shillong. Some of them knew some places in Nagaland because their people were posted in the army and all that. So I was determined to bring the Northeast to what some people call mainland India. So you'll notice that in all my stories, I've woven in, a little bit of the Khasi culture
Yes.
without, I think, disturbing the flow of the story.
Yes, I felt that too. And it sort of makes you fall in love with that whole beauty of Meghalaya and even your traditions. Very graceful, and just the people itself, you realize that, so humble and so loving and so graceful at the same time.
Well, this is my perspective, but Shillong being the capital, it's, uh, I won't say everyone is very nice or very graceful anymore,
Okay.
but
Yes.
the people I've written are people I know, and there's a lot of the rural
Okay.
people here. And in fact, they are the ones who really have kept up the grace and the beauty of Meghalaya. So you'll notice that some of the stories, like Lindsay Nora, for example,
Yes.
she is from the village, and she meets this poet. I think you wanted to ask a question about Lindsay
Yes.
Nora.
I'm curious about this particular story where this young woman, this young housewife, takes all her clothes for washing and goes off. And then she suddenly spots a fellow there and they have a conversation. And he says, I just got off a bus, And while they're having this very interesting, shy, and a playful conversation, she falls asleep. And then she asks a question and she looks up and the man is gone. So the story ends on this note, in the background, there's this bus trundling away. So the reader's left with this thought. I was wondering, was he actually there, or did she conjure up this man, this beautiful man that she desired? So do tell us about that.
Actually, she did. I mean, in my story, she did meet the man, and I wanted to show a girl who has this me time, away from the domestic chores, and she goes to the sparkling brook every day to get away from her house, and enjoy washing her bartans and all that. And she was very angry to see this intruder from the town just sleeping there and as if he owned the place. So you notice, and that was the difference I wanted to show between the rural area and this person who just come, and she felt that, why are you intruding? This is my land. This is my me time, my me space. So she did leave him, and I wrote a conversation to show the different mindset of the city folk and the rural folk.
That's wonderful. Yeah. I want to know what role does Meghalaya's geography and natural beauty play in the narratives? Yeah.
Well, it is about Meghalaya, which is very beautiful.
Yes.
This whole country has got such beautiful
Yes.
places. But nature is very much part of our lives, you know. And we've been like the conservationists from immemorial time. We have our sacred groves.
Yes.
Nobody can enter them, not even remove a twig, leave alone, the way they ravage the trees here.
Yes.
It's disgraceful. And then they, of course, they have religion. They bring in religion, and they have these pujas, and they say there is the forest deity that lives there. So when you bring in religion, well, it's good or bad, I don't know, but it deters the people from entering that place. So, nature is very much part of our lives. We cannot live without nature. And because indigenous culture and education is sort of getting swept away,
Yes.
that's why there is degradation of the environment.
I agree. Yes. Yes, you can. Yeah.
That brings a thought to my mind, Bijoya. When one reads your stories, there is this profound reverence for nature. Your love for nature comes through, and we are all witness to the decimation of nature, be it in Meghalaya or our very own Dehradun. So, how important do you think it is to conserve and revive nature for the amelioration of the human condition?
See, once you remove nature from your lives and you have no respect for nature, your soul is gone. You're just a robot. And like we call Mayram O, Mother Earth. We revere the Mother Earth. Even before a hunt, when hunting was allowed, we would pray to Mother Earth and say, we've come with joy and jubilation and with full respect for the sport of hunting. We have not come to ravage you. So please allow us this morning. So we are, unless you, nature, you, so people who are divorced from nature and who do not respect, I have a school outside Dehradun, and I love working in rural India because people are more responsive and they're more, they're not kind of dead inside. So, so I tell the children that you're going to the mandir with flowers and all mithais and all that, and on the way you're throwing your toffee wrappings and your chips packet on the road on Mother Earth. You've already defiled nature, so why go to a temple at all?
Yeah,
So
I agree.
this is very important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And that's such a beautiful thought.
Thank
That
you
is
so
such a
much.
beautiful
Well, it's our
thought.
traditional thought.
Yes.
I'm sure Mona knows a lot about this, being from Garhwal. And she's so upset about what's happening. But the wrath of nature, we should not forget.
Absolutely. And I think a big example is that, winter has still not set into Dehradun.
Yes.
Yeah, we still haven't felt that chill.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. It's not user. Here, more. Okay. Are there any traditional folk tales or legends that are woven into these stories?
Not this particular book. There are no folk tales. I've got a collection of folk tales,
Yes.
which is not available today. But I have in my next book, the three mothers,
Okay.
my mother and her sisters, I've woven some folk tales because they used to sort of teach through folk tales in the book of etiquette, the teachings of elders. It was never a big lecture. So, my folk tales are not, these are pure fiction, very quirky, and not all Khasis are like this. But yeah, but the customs and of course the environment and all that, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. I felt that even though the stories, they speak about the topic of love, longing, cultures of Meghalaya. There was also, a hint of identity, social justice, or individuality. So, like in the story of Lindsay Nora, like you just told us, the girl is actually, noticed by someone as an individual for the first time. Before that, nobody notices her in her daily
That's
life.
part of the story,
Yes,
yes.
yes. So, how do the stories intersect with the themes of identity, social justice, and individuality?
Okay. I think identity is very important and it has to be sort of embraced in a positive way.
Yes.
Like, because I'm very sure, thanks to my very, he was a visionary, my father was from Sylhet, which
Yes.
is now in Bangladesh. Because we grew up in the Khasi Hills, he said, you will grow up as Khasis. I don't want you to have an identity crisis. So because of that, because I'm so rooted and so confident, I can embrace any identity, any faith, any religion. It doesn't shake me up.
Yes.
So I think like Amartya Sen wrote, identity caused violence. But after I read his book, I realized that his identity was that of an academician. So you can just be a Dehradunite. You don't have to be of a particular community. But I'm sort of comfortable in my cultural identity, so I keep it. And my writing reflects that.
Nice. I felt that too. Um, each story of yours is actually quite unique. And when I was reading it, I kept guessing that, this is how this story will end. But it turned out to be that, it would end in a totally different way, which I hadn't imagined. So, how did you keep that mystery alive? And I think Ira agrees with that. Yeah. So, how did you keep that mystery alive in each story? And how did you make each ending, so unique?
You know, I was really inspired to write short stories by a very famous 19th century French writer called Guy de Maupassant. I hope I've pronounced him right.
Yes.
It's called The Necklace. And I read it, and when I came to the end, I was totally shocked. Like it was delightful. So actually, when I write the stories, and suddenly it's heading to a certain end, I'm as surprised as you. And I say, oh my God, is it a bit too much, And actually, it's hurtling towards an end. And I said, okay, if that's what you want.
I know, because when I actually spoke to you and I said, how did you come up with those endings? Nobody could guess it. And she had the same reaction, I'm as surprised as you are.
Like I said, her reading. Like I said when we started off, that her writing is like writing a song with
Yeah.
naughty twists
Yeah.
and turns. So yes, you completely deliver on
Yeah.
that.
Uh, yeah, I thought in that in Linsunara, I thought that she'll probably fall in love with this guy and she'll probably ride the bus and leave the village. But nothing
that's
like
so
that
predictable.
happened. Yeah, yeah, but nothing like that happened.
They just had a conversation, and he was a poet, and he found meeting her a poetic moment,
Yes.
and she wouldn't have fitted into his life,
Yes.
really.
I loved reading all your stories. Rosalind is a story of longing, but at the same time, it's also a little eerie. It was kind of scary, not kind of, but it was scary. Okay. But even then, it actually leaves you with a feeling of positivity. It doesn't leave you with that eerie feeling, oh, what a scary story. So, and I asked you this before that, have you experienced this or someone experienced it? Um, so I want you to share the story that you shared with me, the inspiration behind Rosalind.
Actually, my brother went, and his friends, I think my brother-in-law, they went for a trek along David Scott Trail. I think David Scott was a political agent of the East India Company. Am I right, Parvati? Yeah, yeah. So there's this trail from Mauplang, the sacred groves, to the other side to Cherrapunji.
Okay.
So they went on this on this walk, on this trek, and they found this little grave of a little English girl,
Oh,
and on it was written, "Here lies Camellia, sweet." A sweet smelling primrose, fading timelessly.
oh,
Here lies camellia,
okay.
sweet smelling primrose, fading timelessly. I was so touched to know that this little, this little grave, and I wanted to write that story, but I'm very, emotional about children, so I didn't want to write that. So I kept it in a notebook. And then, when I was in Kolkata, then my cousins were talking about a very famous family who had a bagan bari, that is a, a country house.
Okay.
And the English mistress refused to leave that house.
Oh.
They did all the havans in the world, but the ghost just wouldn't go. Because she loved him and she loved that particular part of just outside Calcutta.
Okay.
So I combined the two stories. So Camellia became Rosalind, and I shifted to Kosoli because I love
Okay.
Kosoli.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a bit eerie. Yes.
No, but
yes.
it's still a very nice, beautiful story, and it
Yes.
just shows the love and longing of a person even after she's left the world.
Yes,
she's still attached
yes.
to the family itself, not
Yes.
just to that person.
Yes, to that person, to that house
Yeah.
in Kasoli.
And
yeah.
she's hoping for the positivity to remain there. It's not like
Yes.
she's waiting that.
She's
oh,
not
please.
scaring anyone.
Yeah.
She just says, I
Yeah.
want to stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a beautiful story.
Thank you.
And like we've said it again and again, that it's a beautiful book, and each story in itself, is just wonderful, and you just want to keep reading it. I thought that, there could be more stories in it when I finished the book, and I was waiting, maybe there are more.
How nice. Thank you.
So, how do the stories reflect your personal experiences or connections to the region? And which one actually, you've written the book, so I'm sure all of them are very close to your heart. But which one is actually, which resonates to you the most, or, was closest to your heart while you were writing it? Is it a difficult question to choose one?
Mainly, it's, as I said, I capture a moment.
Yes.
It's like Rosalind. I was walking in Cherrapunji with a cousin of mine. Now she's got a resort there, but there were just stones and rocks. And I saw a little girl peeping, a little village girl. That's how Lindsay Nora was born.
Oh.
I said, oh God, I have to write about this girl, some romantic story. And because I want to talk about the rituals, because nobody knows that we have rituals, especially us who are not converted into Christianity. We still have all the rituals, the three main ceremonies like naming, marriage, and the last rites. So I've got that in Betty Mai.
Yes.
So Betty Mai was actually my sister and my sister-in-law had attended a cousin's funeral. And I just reached in Shillong, and I came back, and they said it was so nice. He was living with his youngest wife, last wife.
Yes.
But he had, of course, separated. You have to separate from your other wives. But, his body was lying there. And before the funeral, all the other two families came to pay their respects. So I thought that was very sweet, and how the youngest wife accepted that situation. They came with their children, because the children wanted to see their father.
Oh.
So then I got a chance to write that story.
Yeah, that's a beautiful story. And I know that you pick up a lot of stories from things around you, because recently we were together at some other, event, and there was someone telling you a personal story. She just felt like telling you something, and you said, "I must write about this."
Yes.
Yes. So it's wonderful, because those stories actually are telling something that actually resonates with everyone somewhere.
Yes, because like Mussoorie is, for some reason, it's my favorite place in the world,
Yes, it's beautiful.
especially Landor. So I said, how do I write about Mussoorie when I have Ganesh Saili and all have written such brilliant books and all these English writers? So then I picked out my favorite places in Missouri, especially Landor. Then I wrote a story. And everyone said, oh, did you do the romance in Missouri? I said, no, I've never romanced in Missouri. I romance with the place.
Okay.
Yeah.
I believe Veera had a question to ask you.
And of course, we'll throw it to the audience.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, this is the last one from me, though I have more. Yes. We've been shown 10 minutes, yeah. So there are young writers, budding writers. So I wonder what advice you have for budding writers, especially from the indigenous and marginalized communities who want to tell their own stories. What would you advise them?
Well, you write to connect, basically. So, you know, you have to attract the attention of the reader without spoiling the truth that you want to write about. So, what I've done in my, you know, I feel that there's so many ways of connecting, because if I write a typical Khasi story, it won't be understood in the South or in the West or in the North, excepting by scholars who are really interested. Those are my translations, which I've done, which are very difficult. So when I advise young writers, the first story you write or the first book that you write, you must know your subject very well. You know, you have to know it so well. You have to know it very well. And if you want to connect with the rest of the country, then you bring in some character from another place who's easily recognizable.
Yes.
Then they get attracted to the story. So they learn your story, your customs, or whatever you want to convey. And at the same time, the story is interesting for them. What do you say, Mona? I think so. Yes. It ropes in more people and we want them to read. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes. So any questions? I mean, we'd like people to ask.
I'll begin with a compliment that sort of, you know, your descriptions are so vivid that you are transported to Meghalaya.
Thank you.
And frankly speaking, you know, now I would not like to visit Meghalaya because, you know, the kind of picture you have portrayed, I might be disappointed that this is not what Bijoya Swain said.
Thank you.
And another thing is that now with sort of, you know, the information exposure and all,
Yes, yes, yes.
how different do you find Shillong from the rest of Meghalaya?
Shillong.
Shillong from the rest of Meghalaya.
Shillong became the capital in the 18th century. First it was Cherrapunji. Then the East India Company shifted to Shillong because of the rain. And so Shillong is the most developed. I find it very unfortunate that the Shillongites, the people, are too westernized. It's okay if you're modernized, but they're too westernized. But you can't blame that also because, you know, it was a capital. And there was a lot of influence from everywhere. As if you go to other states in the Northeast, they're totally different. We don't even know each other's language and custom. They've got that tradition, you know, like the Nagas and all that. Whereas now there's a revival of tradition. But Shillong is, well, I'm happy with that it's cosmopolitan, frankly. But I'm sad that the children are too westernized. So, but they're going back to tradition. Traditional lilts are being revived. Oh yeah, but they're too westernized.
Just a small wish, I mean, you can call it a request. I have a wish that, you know, write a massive, you know, novel about Meghalaya. You know, like something do a Gone with the Wind.
Yes, I've written, my publishers have commissioned me to write a book called The Three Mothers. So it goes back to my great-grandmother who lived in the late 19th century and my great-grandfather who was brought education to the hills. So it goes back to her because they said, write about your mothers and their story. My mother, I said, I have so many mothers. And she inspired me a lot because she went through the great earthquake, she went through so many things, and what she taught as a woman to be strong, but family bonding was very, very important among the Khasis. And these are the values you asked me earlier. I think that you have to keep with the changes. And change is the only constant. But there are certain perennial values which have to be kept, like honor, integrity, compassion, and so on. These are eternal values, and in every community, no matter what changes you bring, try to keep them, and to the children. And I think families that are normal and bonded, well, happiness is just a fleeting, so happy family is not, happiness is a fleeting emotion. At this table, we create a healthier society. And if you can't have children and you're not a family person, just don't have children. It's a very difficult job, So we have to think of the youth, and to the young people here, I'll say that if you are a good person, you're a very successful person, And keep that as your ideal and your ambition. It's not about money, fame, and position, because that's very, very superficial. Yeah. So to all the young people, I say, success has to be redefined, and you refine it the best possible way. Thank you.
Vijoya ma'am, again, congratulations, right? It's bound to be a very compelling read after this discussion, and I'm buying the book and getting it signed by you. I have a question over here. When it comes to human sentiments, we are very fearful of the rejection that they might be meted out with. Now, therefore, nothing really washes up ashore for many, many years for so many people. And then you are writing a book on love and longing. How did writing this book help you, sort of unsediment, sort of scratch out your sentiments? And what went into the book that you had feared sort of expressing yourself earlier?
I think eventually, if you have to cope in life, gratitude and acceptance is very important. And rejection is part of it, And I think in romance, longing is so beautiful. But, in the end, what I got from this book when I wrote, and I learned that gratitude and acceptance are the key to a happy life. And if you're a happy person, my mother always said, if you're happy, my children, if you all are happy, I would consider you very successful. I don't know how successful we are, but we are grateful, and we are, composed. What's the other word that I say? Gratitude and acceptance. Acceptance is very important, and gratitude for every little thing, Yes, one last question.
Well, last question. Since morning, I've been attending 3 book launches, and most of them have been ladies. How do you find the time as a mother? How do you manage time to write books? I'm wondering that.
Actually, I Well, actually, when my children joined Vellum Boys, my 2 sons, and I really didn't, I really wanted to write after being in the North, and people are so ignorant, and, they look down on, tribals and stuff like that, and I was going to make sure that they won't. So then I went to my cousin, my Masi, my aunt, who's my mentor, actually. And she said, you must translate the Khasi book of ethics and etiquette. And I said, I can't. It's got 109 stanzas, and it's poetry. And I'm not a poem. She said, if you don't, then this part of Khasi culture will sink into oblivion. I got such a shock, and that became the focus of my life. And I must thank my husband, who's very supportive.
Nobody asks a man who goes to office 9 to 5, how do you find time to go to office? We treat our work with love, respect, sentiment, and for us it is our office. Yeah, that's brilliant. Sit down and write a book and you work till 5. Also it's taken for granted that we are multitaskers.
A very quick one before we end, Bijoya. You've done translations, you've written a novel, you write regularly for journals. I'm wondering, like, I read your book and I think, what next? What genre are you going to explore next? And I get a sense of poetry. Would you like to tell us more about what's your next project?
Yeah, quickly. But after my father's biography, which is really very emotional experience, now I'm writing about my mother and her family. My publishers want me to write about the Khasis. So I've called it The Three Mothers, because I had my mother and her two sisters were my mothers. Then I go back to my great-grandmother in the 19th century and the stories I've heard about her. So that's my next project.
Okay. I just want to say thank you. Yes.
You read my, oh yeah, I'll come to Lando. I come so often, but you must read my last stories, all Lando.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Bijoya ma'am, for your insights into your book. And thank you, Ira. I'd like to end the session by quoting something from one of her stories. There is no such place as far away. So thank you, everyone who's present here, and wishing you all a wonderful day.
Thank you for such a wonderful session, ma'am. And I'd like to thank each of our esteemed panelists for today's session. Now, I'd like to invite our team WOW to felicitate our guest of the evening. Please. Thank you. And a quick note, the book Hillsongs of Love and Longing is available at Natraj stall. So I'd request you to get your copy and get it autographed, please. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.